The stars twinkled against the black canvas of space as the Union exploratory vessel Dristone approached the blue-green planet. Captain Drew stood on the command deck, his 4 eyes blinking in disbelief at the readings on the screen. 70% water, he whispered, his scales shifting to a pale yellow color that indicated deep concern. And you're telling me there's intelligent life here? The science officer nodded, her thin fingers sliding across the display. Yes, Captain. Advanced civilization. They call themselves humans, and their planet Earth. For over 2,000 years, the Galactic Union had marked water-dominant planets with red warnings in their star maps. Such worlds were classified as extreme hazard zones, places where no sensible being would land voluntarily. The very thought of a planet covered in liquid made most Union species feel sick. Captain Drew remembered the old training videos from his academy days. The grainy footage showed a brave explorer from the early days of space travel who had ventured too close to a lake on a water world. The liquid had pulled him in, filled his breathing chambers, and stopped his life in minutes. The Union had named such planets liquid death worlds after that incident. Yet here they were, orbiting a planet that was mostly water, and somehow it had produced intelligent life. Show me these humans, Drew ordered. The main screen flickered to life with images captured by their observation drones. Drew and his crew gasped collectively. The humans moved on the surface of their world without fear. Some walked right up to the edges of vast water bodies. But what truly shocked them came next. Footage of humans deliberately entering the water. What are they doing? Asked the navigation officer, his voice cracking. Are they dying? No, replied the science officer. They appear to be enjoying it. They call this activity swimming. The crew watched in horrified fascination as humans dove beneath the surface, disappearing for long moments before emerging again. Some rode on devices that skimmed across the water surface. Others lived in floating homes on the deadly liquid. How is this possible? Drew muttered. No species in the Union could survive such conditions. Later that day, Captain Drew recorded his official report for the Union Council. We have discovered intelligent life on a Class 5 water world. These beings, called humans, appear to have evolved with extraordinary adaptations. They not only survive near water but deliberately immerse themselves in it for work and pleasure. They extract food from water depths and travel across vast liquid expanses. Most remarkably, they teach their young to enter water voluntarily. This represents a biological capability previously unknown in any sentient species. The report caused an uproar when it reached Union headquarters. Emergency meetings were called. Some officials suggested marking Earth as too dangerous to approach. Others argued these water demons might pose a threat to the Union if they could conquer environments no other species could survive. The debate raged for weeks. Finally, the High Council reached a decision. Cautious contact would be established. If humans could master deadly water environments, they might be valuable allies or dangerous enemies if not approached diplomatically. As the Dristone continued its orbit around Earth, Captain Drew spent many hours watching humans interact with water. He observed children splashing in small, contained water bodies, adults diving deep into oceans, and massive vessels carrying humans across water surfaces. We've always feared what we didn't understand, Drew told his first officer as they watched a human dive from a high cliff into the ocean below. But I think we might have much to learn from these water dwellers. The Union was about to discover just how wrong they had been about water planets and how valuable their new human acquaintances would become. The large silver ship landed at the designated meeting point, a flat concrete area near the coast of what humans called the Pacific Ocean. Ambassador Krill stepped out with his team of 5 Union representatives, all wearing protective suits that sealed their bodies completely from the humid air of Earth. Director Miller waited with a small group of humans. He stepped forward with an extended hand, a gesture the Union team had been briefed about. Ambassador Krill cautiously extended his 3-fingered appendage, completing the human greeting ritual. Welcome to Earth, Miller said with a warm smile. "We're honored to host the first official Galactic Union delegation." Ambassador Krill's translator device converted his clicking sounds to human language. "We are curious about your world. Though we must confess, many of our people find your planet quite frightening." Miller nodded. "We understand. Captain Drew's preliminary reports mentioned your species' discomfort with water. We've arranged our meeting facility to be as comfortable as possible for you." As they walked toward a nearby building, Krill and his team moved with obvious tension, their eyes constantly scanning the sky and surroundings. One of the Union scientists carried a device that measured moisture levels, the readings causing visible distress among the aliens. "The air here contains so much water," whispered one A to another. "It's like walking through poison." Suddenly, the sky darkened. A rumble of thunder echoed across the landscape. The Union delegation froze in place as the first drops of rain began to fall. "Death from above," screamed one of the junior diplomats, dropping to the ground and covering his head. The Union team began to panic. Ambassador Krill's breathing became rapid inside his suit as water droplets splattered against his protective visor. Miller calmly reached into his jacket and pulled out a folding umbrella. With a simple click, it opened above his head, creating a small dry space. The alien delegation stared in amazement. "It's just rain," Miller explained gently. "Here, I brought extras for everyone." He handed out umbrellas to each stunned alien visitor. They held these simple tools like precious technology, marveling as the water bounced off the fabric instead of touching them. "You invented shields against water falling from the sky?" Ambassador Krill asked, genuine awe in his voice. "Something like that," Miller said with a smile. "Let's get inside quickly." Once safely in the coastal facility, the aliens relaxed slightly. The meeting room featured large windows overlooking the ocean, which Miller had thought would provide a beautiful view. Instead, the Union representatives positioned their chairs to face away from the death expanse, as they called it. Miller's presentation about Earth and human culture was repeatedly interrupted by questions about water. How did humans drink it without dying? Why did they deliberately submerge their young in it? Was it true humans could float on its surface? Perhaps a demonstration would help, Miller suggested. He pressed a button, opening sliding doors to reveal an outdoor pool area where his 10-year-old daughter Lily was waiting. The alien delegation approached the glass cautiously. Lily waved at them cheerfully from beside the swimming pool. "My daughter will show you that water is not only safe for us but enjoyable," Miller explained. Ambassador Krill pressed closer to the glass, fascination overcoming fear. Lily took a running start and leaped into the air, curling her body into a ball before splashing into the pool water. The reaction was immediate. 2 Union diplomats collapsed to the floor. Another ran from the room. Ambassador Krill remained standing, but his skin had changed to a pale gray color. She just, he stammered. Lily surfaced, laughing and waving again. "We call that a cannonball," Miller explained. "It's a popular way for children to enter water." Ambassador Krill turned to Miller, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. "Your young deliberately create the largest possible splash. For enjoyment." Miller nodded. "Water has always been central to human development. We evolved from creatures who lived in it." Later that evening, as the Union team prepared to return to their ship, Ambassador Krill approached Miller privately. "Today changed everything we thought we knew," he said quietly. "The Union has avoided water worlds for thousands of years. Now I wonder what treasures we've been missing." 3 months after first contact, the Union ship Water Seeker floated in Earth orbit. Its name, newly painted on the hull, reflected its unprecedented mission: to study water worlds with human help. On the observation deck, Dr. Bell adjusted her uniform nervously. After weeks of preparation, today marked the official start of the exchange program. "Ready to make history?" asked Jack, the former Navy SEAL who stood beside her. His weathered face broke into an easy smile. As ready as I'll ever be, Dr. Bell replied. As Earth's leading oceanographer, she understood the scientific importance of this mission. What she hadn't expected was becoming an ambassador for all of humanity. The doors slid open, and Captain Vex entered. Unlike most Union species, his kind had 6 limbs and a hard outer shell, giving him the appearance of a walking insect. He stopped a careful distance from the humans. "We will reach DVP-7 in 5 days," Captain Vex announced. "This planet has troubled the Union for centuries. Its oceans contain minerals that could power our fleet for decades, but no one has found a way to harvest them." Dr. Bell nodded. "That's why we're here. Humans have been mining underwater resources for generations." Captain Vex's antennae twitched skeptically. "Your ambassador explained that humans can function underwater using special equipment. My crew remains doubtful." Jack crossed his arms. "Why don't we show them?" Within an hour, the ship's cargo bay had been converted for a demonstration. Union engineers had constructed a small tank filled with water from Earth. The entire crew gathered around it, maintaining what they considered a safe distance. Dr. Bell and Jack stood at the edge of the tank in their swimsuits. The Union crew murmured in disbelief. "You're not wearing protective suits," one engineer observed. "We don't need them for basic swimming," Dr. Bell explained. "Our skin is waterproof." Jack dove in first, executing a perfect entry that barely splashed. The crew gasped collectively as he disappeared beneath the surface, then erupted in astonished clicks and whistles when he calmly surfaced and waved. Dr. Bell followed with a graceful dive. Underwater, she opened her eyes and gave a thumbs up to the aliens watching through the tank's glass sides. Their expressions of horror and fascination were almost comical. When both humans climbed out, Captain Vex approached cautiously. "Remarkable. But the Union has mapped the oceans of WP-7. Some areas extend hundreds of meters deep. Surely no being can survive at such depths." "That's where this comes in," Dr. Bell said, gesturing to the diving equipment her team had brought. She lifted an oxygen tank and regulator. "With this gear, we can breathe underwater for hours." One of the Union scientists stepped forward. "Breathe underwater? Impossible." "Not for us," Jack said. He picked up the regulator and demonstrated how it worked. "Humans can also train to hold their breath for several minutes without any equipment." Captain Vex's antennae stood straight up. "I find this claim difficult to accept without evidence." Jack grinned. "Time me." Before anyone could object, he dove back into the tank. The Union crew crowded the glass as Jack settled calmly at the bottom, occasionally releasing small bubbles. After 2 minutes, Captain Vex began pacing nervously. At 3 minutes, one of the engineers called for emergency intervention. Just as a team moved forward with rescue tools, Jack pushed off the bottom and surfaced. 3 minutes, 17 seconds, he announced, breathing heavily but smiling. A stunned silence fell over the cargo bay. Finally, Captain Vex spoke. "We have misunderstood water for thousands of years," he said quietly. "We saw only death where you found life." Later that evening, Dr. Bell found a small group of Union crew members back at the tank. They were watching the water with new eyes, not with fear, but with curiosity. One young engineer was cautiously extending a gloved appendage toward the surface. "Would you like to touch it?" Dr. Bell asked gently. The engineer pulled back instinctively, then paused. "Is it safe?" Dr. Bell nodded. "With proper precautions, your people could learn to work with water too. That's why we're here." The engineer looked at his companions, then back at the water. With trembling movements, he extended his appendage until just the tip of his glove touched the surface, creating tiny ripples. It was a small first step, but something had fundamentally changed. The Union had begun its journey from fear to understanding. The small shuttle shook violently as it entered the atmosphere of GVP-7. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. Dr. Bell gripped her seat tightly while Jack tried to help the Union pilot stabilize their descent. "Engine failure in sectors 2 and 3, reported Rault. the Union scientist who had volunteered to join the first close survey of the water planet. His voice quivered with barely controlled panic. "We're losing altitude too quickly." Through the viewport, the vast blue expanse of WP7 grew larger by the second. Unlike Earth's oceans, these waters shimmered with a slight purple tint, due to unique mineral compositions. Under different circumstances, Dr. Bell would have been excited to study such an alien sea. Now she was calculating their chances of survival. "Brace for impact," Jack shouted as the shuttle skimmed the water's surface, bounced once like a stone, then plunged beneath the waves. Water immediately began seeping through damaged seals. Ralt froze in terror, his 6 limbs pulling tight against his body. "We are dead," he whispered. "No one survives water." Jack unbuckled his safety harness and moved quickly to the emergency locker. "Bell, check the communication system. See if you can get a distress signal out." Dr. Bell nodded, forcing herself to remain calm for Ralt's sake. The Union scientist was experiencing his worst nightmare, trapped in a sinking metal box, filling with what he considered instant death. "Ralt, look at me," she said firmly. "Humans survive in water all the time. We're going to be okay." The communication system was damaged beyond quick repair. Outside, through the small viewport, Dr. Bell could see they were sinking slowly into darker waters. "No response from the ship," she reported, "and we're already about 30 meters down." Jack had emptied the emergency locker, sorting through equipment designed for Union species. "Most of this is useless to us underwater," he muttered. Then his face brightened. "But we can work with this." He held up several emergency breathing filters and some repair patches. "Bell, help me modify these. We can create improvised diving gear." As they worked rapidly to convert the alien equipment, a loud crack echoed through the cabin. A thin stream of water sprayed from a new fracture in the hull. Ralt cried out, scrambling to the highest point in the cabin. "The pressure will crush us before we reach the bottom," he moaned. "And if not, the water will fill our breathing chambers, and we will die the worst death known to the Union." Jack moved to Ralt's side. "That's not going to happen. Dr. Bell and I are going to get you out of here." "Impossible. We're surrounded by liquid death." "Not for us," Dr. Bell said, holding up their makeshift breathing apparatus. "For humans, this is just another environment to adapt to." The next 20 minutes were spent preparing. The humans explained to Ralt how they would exit the shuttle. They fashioned a harness from safety restraints that would keep Ralt secured between them. They created an air bubble in his protective suit that would keep him dry. "The main ship will be searching for us," Jack explained, "but that storm up above will make it impossible for them to send rescue craft." Dr. Bell studied the navigation maps still functioning on the damaged console. "There's an island about 2 kilometers from our position. If we can reach it, we'll have a better chance of being spotted." Ralt's eyes widened. "You propose to swim through open water for 2 kilometers while keeping me alive? It cannot be done." Jack checked the seal on his makeshift breathing device. "Navy SEALs are trained to swim much further than that. The water here is actually warmer than what I trained in." "But the creatures, the pressure, the currents." Dr. Bell put a reassuring hand on Ralt's shoulder. "Trust us. This is what humans do." As water rose past their knees, Jack released the emergency hatch. Water rushed in more quickly now. Ralt trembled violently as they secured him in the harness. His exoskeleton had turned a pale color that the humans recognized as extreme fear. "Remember," Jack said, "don't struggle. Let us do the work. Keep your breathing steady in your suit." Dr. Bell took one last look at the sinking shuttle. "Ready?" Jack nodded. Together, they pulled the terrified scientist toward the hatch and the open water beyond. "Humans," Ralt whispered as they entered the alien ocean, "may truly be the most remarkable species in the galaxy." The news spread across the Galactic Union faster than light-speed communications. Every data terminal, every gathering place, every ship across 1,000 worlds displayed the same incredible images. two humans swimming through alien waters, carrying a Union scientist between them. Rescue teams had found them on the small rocky island, all three alive. The humans were exhausted but smiling. Ralt, still in shock but unharmed, had not stopped telling his story since their return to the main ship. "They pulled me through the water for 2 hours," he repeated to anyone who would listen. 2 hours. In open liquid. We passed creatures with tentacles longer than our shuttle. We navigated currents that would tear apart most vessels, and the humans treated it like a normal day's work. In the medical bay of the water seeker, Dr. Bell submitted to yet another scan by fascinated Union doctors. "Your evolution is remarkable," said the chief medical officer, studying the results. "Your body contains so much water itself, yet maintains perfect balance. And these structures," he pointed to the scan of her lungs, "they can extract oxygen from your air, but you can hold your breath and survive without fresh oxygen for minutes at a time." Dr. Bell smiled patiently. She had become accustomed to being treated like a scientific marvel. Humans actually evolved from creatures that lived in the oceans of our world. We still carry those adaptations. On the other side of the medical bay, engineers surrounded Jack, bombarding him with questions about diving techniques. He sketched designs on a tablet, showing them how to improve their existing suits for underwater use. "The key is maintaining air supply while managing pressure," he explained. "With the right equipment, your people could work underwater almost as well as humans." Admiral Socks, who had arrived from Union headquarters within days of the rescue, watched these interactions with calculating eyes. The tall, thin alien had recognized immediately what many others were only beginning to understand. Humans possessed an ability that could transform the Union's future. "This changes everything," he told Captain Vex privately. "Hundreds of worlds previously marked as inaccessible could now be explored. Resources we've never been able to harvest are suddenly within reach. All because these water creatures decided to help us rather than fear us," Captain Vex observed. Admiral Socks nodded thoughtfully. "We must strengthen this alliance immediately." 2 weeks later, Dr. Bell stood nervously beside a shallow pool specially constructed in the ship's main assembly area. The entire crew had gathered to witness a historic moment, the first Union official deliberately entering water. Admiral Socks approached wearing a suit based on Jack's designs, but modified for his alien physiology. Transparent sections revealed his body inside, while sophisticated breathing apparatus connected to his respiration organs. "I've studied the human records," Admiral Socks announced to the gathered crowd. "For thousands of years, their leaders have demonstrated courage by being first to enter unknown territory. Today, I follow their example." A hush fell as the Admiral slowly descended the steps into the pool. The water rose to his midsection. Through the transparent suit, observers could see his breathing rate increase dramatically, his instinctive fear response fighting against rational thought. Dr. Bell gave him an encouraging nod. Admiral Socks took the final step, submerging himself completely for 5 seconds before rising again. Applause and the Union equivalent of cheers erupted across the assembly area. Images of this moment, transmitted across Union space, became instantly iconic. Within days, hundreds of scientists and engineers volunteered for the newly formed Aquatic Exploration Division. In her private quarters that evening, Dr. Bell reviewed data from WP7's oceans that would have been impossible to gather without direct underwater observation. The mineral deposits were even richer than the Union had suspected. Elements rare throughout the galaxy existed here in abundant supply, enough to revolutionize Union technology. A message flashed on her screen from Earth's diplomatic office. Union Council has upgraded Earth's status from provisional member to critical alliance partner, negotiating unprecedented technology exchange. Your team's success has changed humanity's future. Dr. Bell smiled as she looked out her viewport at the shimmering waters of WP7 below. What had once been feared was becoming a bridge between species. Sometimes, she said to herself, the most valuable thing one civilization can offer another is a different perspective. 6 months after the dramatic rescue, A fleet of specially designed vessels hovered above the purple-blue waters of WP-7. The mission that had begun as a simple survey had evolved into the largest joint operation in Union history. Jack stood on the main deck of the command ship, watching as teams prepared for the day's work. Human divers in sleek wetsuits checked equipment alongside aliens in modified pressure suits. The contrast between their forms and movements still fascinated onlookers from both species. "Final checks complete," reported the Union coordinator. "Extraction teams ready for descent." Jack nodded. As operation leader, he had spent weeks training this unique workforce. Even now, many of the Union crew members approached water with deep-rooted fear, but their desire for the rare minerals below outweighed generations of instinct. "Remember your training," Jack addressed the gathered teams. "Humans take point on each dive. Union members maintain constant communication. We work in pairs, no exceptions." The mixed teams boarded small submersible craft designed by joint Human-Union engineers. These vessels could transport them to the proper depth, where divers would exit to work directly on the mineral formations. In the control room, Dr. Bell monitored environmental readings with Union scientists. The mineral deposits they sought grew in unique formations along underwater ridges. Unlike Earth's oceans, WP-7's waters contained higher concentrations of certain elements that created these valuable structures. "Team 1 has reached the target zone," announced a communications officer. "Beginning extraction." On the screens, they watched as humans led the way out of the submersibles. The aliens followed with impressive precision, despite their natural fear. Weeks of training had prepared them well. The operation proceeded smoothly for 2 hours. 3 teams had already returned with substantial mineral samples, their Union members visibly proud of their accomplishment. Then the warning sensors flashed red. "Seismic activity detected," Dr. Bell called out. "Underwater tremor approaching Sector 7. Jack immediately activated the emergency channel. "All teams evacuate Sector 7 immediately. Return to vessels." On the monitoring screens, they watched as Teams 4 and 5 quickly responded, moving toward their submersibles. But Team 6, working at the deepest point, was directly in the path of the coming disturbance. "Team 6, do you copy?" "Immediate evacuation," Jack repeated urgently. The response came broken through static. "Reading you. But 2 suits. Malfunction. Pressure warnings." Dr. Bell enhanced the video feed. 2 Union team members were struggling, their suits showing damage from falling debris dislodged by the initial tremors. The human divers were trying to help them, but the current was already strengthening. "Their suits are failing," a Union engineer reported, horror in his voice. "If water enters their breathing chambers." Without hesitation, Jack grabbed his own equipment. "Prepare emergency rescue submersible," he ordered. "I'm going down." Minutes later, Jack and 2 experienced human divers launched toward the endangered team. The submersible fought against increasingly violent currents as they descended. "We can't get any closer," the pilot announced. "Currents too strong for the vessel." Jack checked his oxygen supply. "Then we swim from here." The 3 humans exited the submersible and pushed against the powerful flow, their years of training evident in their controlled movements. The Union crew watching from above fell silent, many turning away, certain they were witnessing a suicide mission. Through swirling sediment and strengthening currents, the rescue team reached the stranded aliens. One suit had completely failed, its occupant barely conscious. The second was quickly losing pressure integrity. The humans worked with practiced efficiency. Jack attached an emergency breathing apparatus to the first alien, while his teammates secured the second. Together, they began fighting their way back against the current. Above, in the control room, Dr. Bell held her breath as the life sign monitors fluctuated. The current had increased to levels that would tear apart standard equipment. "They can't make it," whispered a Union officer. "The force is too strong." Dr. Bell shook her head. "Never underestimate what humans can do in water." After 30 agonizing minutes, the rescue team surfaced with both aliens alive. Medical teams rushed forward as they were brought aboard. The Union crew stared in disbelief, then broke into their version of applause, a rhythmic tapping that reverberated throughout the ship. That evening, as the injured aliens recovered in the medical bay, the Union captain addressed the assembled crews. "Today I witnessed something our histories will record for generations," he said solemnly. "When faced with deadly water and impossible odds, our human allies didn't hesitate. They risked everything to save lives that not long ago would have considered them strange water demons." He turned to Jack and the rescue team. "You have shown us that what we fear most can be overcome with courage and cooperation." 5 years passed since humans first showed the Union that water wasn't something to fear. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Planets once marked with warnings were now bustling with activity. Resources previously thought impossible to reach now flowed through trade routes, creating new prosperity across hundreds of worlds. Captain Drew stood on the white sand of a Florida beach, his protective suit much lighter than the first models. Union technology had improved rapidly, allowing his kind to visit Earth with increasing comfort. Beside him stood Director Miller, watching the waves roll gently onto the shore. "I never thought I'd see this day," Drew said, his translator converting his clicks to human speech. "Members of my species voluntarily traveling to a water world for, what did you call it? Vacation." Miller laughed. "Tourism is one of humanity's oldest industries. Though I admit, alien beach resorts weren't part of our space program plans." In the shallow water ahead of them, a group of young aliens wearing specialized swimming gear splashed cautiously under the watchful eyes of human instructors. Among them was Lily, now 17, and one of the most sought-after water guides in the exchange program. "Your daughter has a gift," Drew observed. "The young ones trust her." Miller nodded proudly. "She's been accepted to the Interstellar Maritime Academy. Next year, she'll be training both humans and aliens in advanced underwater operations." The academy had been established 3 years earlier, after the demand for human diving expertise had grown too large for informal training programs. Located on Earth's coast, it featured specialized facilities for different species and various water environments. Its graduates were among the most highly paid specialists in the galaxy. Further down the beach, Admiral Zox emerged from the water with a small group of Union officials. Though still enclosed in protective suits, they moved with confidence that would have been unimaginable years earlier. Zox had become the leading advocate for water planet exploration after his historic first immersion. "The ministers are impressed," he announced, approaching Drew and Miller. "They've approved funding for 5 more joint colonies on water worlds in the Cygnus sector." The joint colonies represented the most ambitious project yet, permanent settlements where humans and Union species lived together on planets once deemed uninhabitable. Humans provided their water expertise, while the Union contributed advanced technology suited to each world's unique challenges. "The economic reports came in yesterday," Miller added. "The rare minerals from just 3 water planets have funded the Union's fleet expansion for the next decade. And Earth's position as the supplier of water world expertise has transformed our economy." Drew looked out at the ocean, still feeling a flutter of his old instinctive fear. "Knowledge truly is the antidote to fear," he said quietly. That evening, a special ceremony took place on the beach. Humans and aliens gathered as the sun set over the water. Ralt, now the Union's ambassador to Earth, stood before the assembly. The scientist who had once believed he would die in water now led diplomatic relations between the species. 5 years ago, Rolf began, "I was rescued by humans who swam through an alien ocean to save my life. Today, we formally reclassify all water-dominant planets in Union territory." He activated a holographic display showing the updated Union star charts. Throughout the map, hundreds of planets previously marked with warning symbols now showed new designations. "No longer will these worlds be labeled deadly hazard zones," Ralt continued. "From this day forward, they will be known as human specialty environments, places where our combined strengths can unlock new possibilities." The crowd applauded as the new classifications appeared across the star map. As night fell, Many of the visitors returned to their ships, but a small group remained. In the gentle moonlight, Lily led a midnight swim lesson for the bravest Union visitors. Their nervous laughter mixed with splashes as they experienced floating for the first time without technology. Captain Drew watched from his beach chair, remembering his first glimpse of Earth 5 years earlier. How alien and frightening it had seemed. Now he sat comfortably on its shore, watching the stars reflect on the water surface. "The universe is full of wonders we cannot imagine," he said to Miller, who sat nearby, "and fears we cannot overcome alone." Miller nodded, looking out at where the dark water met the night sky. "But together, there's no environment we can't adapt to, no challenge we can't face." In the gentle waves, humans and aliens swam side by side, former enemies of nature now partners in exploring the vast waters of the galaxy.